Welcome to Afternoon Garage. Today I find myself outside working on something messy. Always wanted to have a cop car of some kind, and well, this kind of fit the bill. I didn't really expect that I would encounter as many problems as I've had with this car. I thought it would kind of just be an easy flip. Really, I was trying to help a friend out, and he had this car he had to get rid of, and so there was many problems with it. The first being, and my clue was the instrument cluster wasn't functional as a digital odometer, and I couldn't tell the mileage on it. My advice to anybody buying a car is check into it, look into things. Don't believe what people say, because once I got the instrument cluster out, got the odometer repaired, I was able to see it had many more miles than the seller represented. So that's a shame. That kind of stuff happens infrequently, but now I have to sell a car with over 150,000 miles on it that I would have never taken on had I known what the mileage is. So, you know, honesty is a really important thing when selling a car, and boy, if you can't trust your neighbor, that's a tough thing. So anyway, I'm stuck with this. I have to fix it. I have to complete it. There are four holes in the roof, one hole in the trunk. The previous owner had taken it upon himself to put some kind of a black vinyl top on it, and he used contact adhesive that didn't work at all. Then he proceeded to put Gorilla tape all over the windows and try to seal it up. So you can see that it's really started to rust pretty bad, and it looks like somebody's tried to grind the paint off. I'm not really quite sure what happened here, but I know that I get to fix it. So I don't really think the paint match is going to be a problem. It's just going to be a whole bunch of labor involved in painting this and getting it back to where it's a sellable condition. Interior was in terrible shape. It looks like somebody had been eating French fries in this thing for a long time. So it's kind of really greasy, and you know, police officers kind of live in these things. So what it does have going for it is it has low idle hours. There's an idle hour meter in these P71 police interceptors to tell you how long the cars sit there and idle while maybe a police officer is doing paperwork, or maybe it's outside of the donut shop staying warm for them, or whatever it might be. These cars get idled quite a bit, and the lower the idle hours, of course, the better off you are. So what I have to do here is I have to paint the roof and the whole rear quarter section and the trunk. There's some paint chipping around the rear flanks. The major thing that was wrong with this car when the seller sold it to me was he said he made right-hand corners, and when he did that, the transmission started to slip a little bit. So I took it on a drive, and sure enough, the transmission started to slip with right-hand corners. So I checked the fluid level. Fluid level was overfilled. So that was my first clue that something was probably wrong with the transmission. I dropped the transmission pan, and the filter was laying in the bottom of the transmission pan. Not good, not a good situation, but an easy fix. Purchased a new filter. This thing took almost 14 quarts of Ford synthetic automatic transmission fluid. That stuff wasn't cheap. That stuff was maybe $12 a quart. I have a couple $100 invested in fluids. I'll just use this as a learning experience, and don't buy cars like this anymore. Alright, I got all 5 holes welded up. So the main thing is to check and make sure this is going to be flat. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put a whole bunch of body filler on, especially a part like the roof or anything like that. To do that, we'll be using some straight edges. Use a long one for, of course, long panels. This has kind of an arch to it, so anything small, just kind of go right along it. You can tell really quick where it's high and where it's going to be low. So in this case right here, I can see there's a little space under here. That one's just kind of low, just right at where the weld was. So that's fine. I'm going to leave that alone. This right here It looks like the only one. This one here looks like the only one I'm really going to have to mess with a little bit. So to do that, we'll put a little heat on it. Once again, see where your low spot is. Then what you want to do is you want to heat the material around the low spot. So figure out where that is. Really careful with your heat. Probably see it coming up there. Kind of helps to have the whole general area heated up too, so you're not getting any rapid cooling. That's not what you want. Rapid cooling is going to shrink the metal. Heating and letting it cool slowly is going to expand the metal. And check your temperature. Another thing, a word of caution is sometimes there's some sound deadening underneath the roof. Make sure that's not present before you heat this up too much. You'll have a fire inside. Ouch. You can see that that's really kind of tightened up that metal. It's not... And we'll slowly return it to room temperature. That's much better than it was. It's okay, like I said, to have a low spot right where your weld is. That's not a problem.
A few minutes later.
I will check now to see if we have any real bad low spots. Looks to me like it's going to be pretty good. So I think at this point, another thing you really need to look for is kind of push on the metal a little bit, and if it drops down, that's something called oil canning, and you really kind of want to fix that so that your metal is structural too before you apply any body filler onto this. So the plan now is to take a dual action sander, go over the whole thing with maybe an 80 grit or something like that, get majority of this rust off, and kind of blend this paint in here where it looks like somebody had done something with it, and then we'll prepare the edges for paint. Kind of want to just DA it out, and then we'll fill up these holes a little bit. Should be okay. Something real quick about body filler. Make sure you do some kind of job like this where you just need a real thin skim coat. You want to make sure and have a fresh can of filler. It has it's kind of a resin based. You could probably thin it down with some fiberglass resin. But once this stuff kind of gets dried up, it kind of makes it hard to spread and everything like that. So, new can of filler. It's only 25 bucks.
"11 minutes later."
What you want to do is you just want to keep on checking this stuff. This is kind of stick your nail in a little bit. It's been probably 5-10 minutes. It's kind of cold out here today, so what you don't want is you don't want the surface very tacky. It feels kind of tacky. It's got just a little bit left. Probably looking at maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then we can start hitting it. So I'm going to use something like this. This is a straight line sander, air powered. Does a pretty good job. And then this is just a flat file board. 40 grit sandpaper, 36 to 40 on both. Want to get it down fast and then slowly kind of fill it in. There's many ways to do this kind of stuff, but to do it quickly and accurately is kind of a trick.
A few minutes later.
Yeah, it's just at the right point now, so I think we can start cutting into this a little bit. There, you can see. What's going to happen here is going to load up the paper pretty good. So what I usually use is a twisted cup brush. And I'll just kind of do that with it. It seems kind of abrasive and kind of hard, but this stuff is really going to start collecting onto here because it's not completely dry, which is what you want. Start sanding. What it kind of should look like when it's done. Take the longboard to it, and you see kind of a hazy edge around the whole thing. You know you got it, and then on the inside, there's no dark spots or anything like that. So that's pretty good, and you can feel it with your hand. Put your hand along it. Your hand is the best indicator of what's going to go on. So it feels pretty good. This one, you can see, it's low right here. Low right here. This edge didn't feather and I didn't push it because you can see it's kind of sanding. The longboard was sanding right in here and it didn't make it. You can also see my welds are a little bit high. So I think the thing to do is grind those down a little bit first. Well, you can see these are turning out okay. Most of these I did in one coat. That's kind of what you want to have. That's all good surface preparation, making sure everything's really level and flat to begin with. So you just add a little tiny body filler, sand off just a little bit. Shouldn't have to have more than, I don't know, 2 or 3 coats. But those complex, you get compound curves and that kind of thing, you can take just a little bit more filler. But you really shouldn't be putting anything on either any more than like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch at the maximum. So, this is looking pretty good. Now we can see that this looks pretty good in here. That's pretty feathered. Feels good right in there. Right here we see we have a line where we have body filler. And then kind of a no man's land and it's standing right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of fill this whole area in here. This whole area must have just been a little bit lower than I thought it was. So we'll fill from here to here. You just want to make sure don't sand too much, because if you sand too much you can't ever get it back. So we'll fill this. I think the whole purpose of this video, I just kind of want to demonstrate that you can use whatever you got. You can use the shed. You can buy a $200 thing from Costco, put it up, and paint a card. When I was a kid, I built a few kit cars and built a Lamborghini Countach inside of a small divided duplex garage. And let me tell you, there was probably 1.5 feet on either side. I managed to paint that thing in that garage and make it look pretty good. So you can do anything you want to do, put your mind to it. Anyway, we're going to continue prep work on this. I kind of want to smooth this out a little bit. And you can see we still have copious amounts of paint coming off. Probably going to have to remove the emblem here. Just about ready to mask this off. But before I do that, somebody did some damage here, and it seems that most of my time is spent repairing things that people have already done. You can see that there's adhesive. He put a vinyl top on it and then glued it into the... He glued it in here, so there's glue residue all the way around and on the front windshield molding here. There's glue residue. And man, yeah, I'll tell you what, you know what you're doing, don't work on it. It's going to take me a long time, so usually what I kind of come up with is some Scotch-Brite. You want to use the finest Scotch-Brite you can, which is the white kind. This is not very abrasive. It doesn't leave marks. It's good for taking paint off of things, but you know, some lacquer thinner and some gloves and a bunch of scrubbing really isn't my idea of refinishing this one. You just leave it alone, you weld the holes up, you do the body filler, and you you mask it, and you prime it, and you paint it. Well, can't really do that here. So, I'm complaining, but I'm gonna get it done. So you want to put something underneath here and make sure, put something underneath here to kind of prop this out a little bit. And I think the best thing to do here is be very careful with the glass. Best thing to do is just stick some wire underneath there. It's usually what I do, and it kind of brings it up a little bit. That way you can get under there and carefully sand. And then this will have a little bit of a memory, so when you pull the wire back out, maybe some little bit of heat will get it to lay back down again. But it usually doesn't affect it too much. These pieces of trim are usually urethaned in there with the windshield, so don't count on getting anything like this out. And in fact, don't even try to get it out. Just don't mess with it. If you just all you really need to do is surface prep the steel underneath it, and then put some paint underneath it. And carefully put it back where it was. in the garage and get set up for paint, looks like I've run out of time. So yeah, we covered a lot of stuff in this episode here. Just you can get an idea that sanding a car is not as easy as it really seems, especially if you want to take it down quickly. That's the most important thing I can get across in this video, is take that filler down as quick as possible. Because if you sit there and let it cure too much, or you use something like 80 grit on fresh body filler, it's not going to happen quickly, and what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a wavy panel. So I know it's kind of a drag to start sanding things when it just gums up into the sanding block, but hey, really that's really the way to do it. So time is critical on that kind of stuff. Just kind of test, and you know, if it doesn't work out, you can put another coat on it. But it's best to have it done in about 2 to 3 coats. You know, especially if you have a few little pinholes, you can go over it again. And another thing I want to stress is make sure it really don't break out this paint till it's really necessary. A lot of people, I see them put primer on things so they can make things more visible and that kind of thing. And then you're putting body filler on top of the primer. And then you're putting more primer on and body filler on top of the primer. You end up with a mess, kind of, because it doesn't all sand the same. The primer has a different hardness than the filler, so you'll end up with a wavy panel that way too. So next week we'll get into this epoxy primer here. We'll start spraying some of that on, and then we'll spray some high build primer, some 2K primer, and go over that and how to detect areas, wavy panels and that kind of thing. Another thing to note is that these kind of surfaces that I'm working on here are the most difficult ones to do, because what happens is your eye kind of catches the reflection across the hood or the roof or that kind of thing. So if it's not perfectly flat, you're definitely going to see it more so than on the side of the car where, you know, where the reflection is generally just the ground. So there's no real light coming back up. What I'm trying to do is share my ideas, what I can do. If you have something you like to do a little better, just let me know. And again, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Till next week.